Olá, nós estamos aqui num programa especial Pessoas de Valor, um programa com um palestrante internacional. Estamos aqui no 5º Congresso Brasileiro de EMDR em São Paulo e nós trouxemos para entrevistar, uma grande honra, o professor Andrew Silbert. Ele é um consultante em saúde mental internacional, ele é capacitado pela Associação Internacional, pelo Instituto Internacional de EMDR, e fala sobre assuntos muito importantes de saúde mental, como os distúrbios alimentares, né, eating disorders, e também muito sobre ansiedade. Ele é instrutor de treinador, ele é um treinador de profissionais de EMDR em todo o mundo. Professor Andrew, it's an honor to have you here in Pessoas de Valor and to talk about your work and about EMDR, and we will have a talk about these important issues. And you are here now in Brazil for the Congress, yes, and to give a lectures and a workshop in anxiety and lecture in eating disorders that was yesterday. Yes. I would like you to introduce yourself, to say about your work, how do you came to EMDR, and that you train professionals in all over the world.
Be happy to. Anyway, it's an honor for me to be here. I mean, this is my first time in Brazil, and it's been a fantasy of mine since I was a little boy to get to Brazil. Yeah. So I'm here, and it's an honor. It is.
You are enjoying being here?
Well, I think I would enjoy it more if I could see more than the one street between the hotel and the conference.
Only working now.
Right now, that's all I'm doing.
But you are going to visit places after?
Not this time, but I plan on coming back when I have more time. I would love to see the Amazon. I would love to see the coast of Brazil, but right now I'm here primarily just to work, and then I have one free day on Sunday. I'll do something.
At Sunday you have to work. I live in the coast, and when you come back here, you come to Santos, that is our city. I am with Ari Brito there, that's behind the cameras, and you can go there with us in Santos and we will show you.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Wonderful. That's a date. Okay. So basically about the work that I do. Actually, I began as a music therapist. Because I was always, I loved music, and I believe that music could do things for people that words could not do. In other words, music, if you think in terms of the right brain and left brain, so the left brain we use for language and for thinking, linear thinking, much therapy is not able to get to the other side of the brain where we store the emotions and the body sensations. Yes. Music can do that, which is why I was attracted to music therapy to begin with.
You are a musician also?
I would say I was. I haven't played music in many years, but I was. And I still love music, and I hope at some point to be able to get time again for music. But I found that talking about things that bother people and trauma and painful events was not enough. It was never enough. Verbal therapy just didn't do it. And music...
Traditional psychological therapy.
Yeah, and it was important. I think it's a necessary piece, but it's necessary but not sufficient. And my sense was that music could be a great help, but I also found that music by itself wasn't enough. And that's over the years, I eventually began working with clients who had intellectual disabilities. And it was interesting because I couldn't do very much verbal therapy with them because they were intellectually basically disabled. So I had to find a different language, and that's where music came in. But still, it wasn't quite enough. I mean, with music, I could make contact. They were able to express emotions.
Music accesses the body also.
Everything. It's amazing what it does. But I also realized that there were problems and difficulties that verbal therapy and music therapy by itself was not sufficient. And
something else was missing.
Excuse me?
Something else was missing to
absolutely.
achieve the point.
Yeah, and that's really when I discovered EMDR.
How many years ago?
About 1996, I think. Yeah.
You were one of the first.
I think I might have been the second wave but it was, and instantly I realized how powerful it was, most importantly because it was able to reach all parts of an experience. So if you and I have a painful experience, and if we just talk about it, we make some progress. But the feelings, the body sensations, sometimes the images, all of that is still stuck in a different part of the brain. And what I discovered was that EMDR covered very intentionally all of those bases. It covered the feelings, because it was able to reach and stimulate a part of the brain that holds the emotions, that holds the body sensations. It also enabled the person to bring up and to neutralize images that were painful, negative thoughts and beliefs about the self. So you see, all of the aspects of any painful experience were very intentionally covered with the EMDR.
So saying when we have a trauma,
yes,
we have all these possibilities, and the conventional therapies cannot access the whole of the situation. And you discovered that with EMDR you could access and work and with this totality of the trauma and the memories, right, and have good results.
Right. Now, it's also, I think it's important to keep in mind that EMDR is also stands on the shoulders of many other therapies.
Of course.
Right. And so cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, the therapy that was mostly my background was Gestalt therapy. And the Gestalt therapy, the emphasis is always on the present moment, and whatever we talk about, we need to make it real, as if it's happening now, not talk about a memory like it's something.
So you bring the experience to the present.
Yes. Yes.
Fritz Perls was a genius also.
Excuse me?
Fritz Perls.
Oh, Fritz Perls, exactly. Yeah. And Fritz Perls had a phrase, he called it aboutism. And aboutism was talking about something rather than experiencing it again, but now in a corrective way.
Okay.
So, which is very much what EMDR does.
Yes, yes.
See? That's why I found EMDR so easy for me, because once you start the bilateral stimulation, so somebody is moving their eyes back and forth, and what that is doing is that there are different hypotheses as to how that gets things moving in the brain. But essentially, if you think about information from a painful experience, which is stored in different parts of the brain, but the feelings and the body sensations are in a part of the brain that is not accessible to language.
Yes.
It's a mute part of the brain.
Because sometimes it happened in an early phase of life with a child that cannot speak.
But even after, even with adults, if something happened a year ago for an adult, the important thing is that the brain holds the feelings and the body sensations in the kind of the rear, the posterior side of the right side of the brain. And that whole side of the brain, that part of the brain, does not respond to language. I could talk to you forever about the feeling, but it's not going to move the feelings.
You not feel it.
Right. And the feeling is, it almost as if in Gestalt work, we want to make a feeling come alive. And when the feeling comes alive, it's like, think of it starting to move from this part of my brain to another part of my brain where I have very adaptive information skills. I know that I'm safe, even though I don't feel safe. You see how that split happens?
So is the reprocessing.
Exactly. And the reprocessing or the reconsolidation is bringing together information that has been stuck in a part of the brain where it cannot be resolved. And then the bilateral stimulation moves that to the part of the brain that can now resolve it, so the person can think about the memory.
It's now a memory, a part of life, not a ghost.
Yes, exactly. It's not a ghost sitting on my shoulder, and it's not this baggage that I have to carry around with me every day. But it's over. It was terrible that it happened, but it doesn't bother me anymore. And very importantly, I've learned from it. See, the learning is, think of it like of eating disorders, digesting, is that when we process the memory, we really digest it in a way that it becomes a part of us that makes us strong.
So it's the resilience work, huh?
Yeah.
You stay with what is good, what I learned from the bad experience, and the rest I can let it go.
Exactly.
And about the eating disorders that you work in, you are a specialist in this area, and you brought yesterday in your lecture some examples of works about it, eating disorders. How can you lecture us about this? Say something important about eating disorders, because we have not days, only minutes, but it's very important because nowadays we see people with eating disorders in every age and social class. It's universal.
Yes, it is. And I've been invited to this coming April, this coming spring, to do 4 days of teaching around eating disorders in Singapore, because it is so widespread in Singapore.
We see their technology and the youngsters with it's connected, correlated. Technology and eating disorders.
Yes. The small island in the South Pacific, I think it's Bali. The women there had no problems with their body image for centuries. As soon as the television was introduced, the problem with eating disorders and body image difficulties started to grow. And I think that was because of the exposure to cultures around the world. See?
So you get an image disorder and expectations and insatisfaction about your own body, and it begins with these eating disorders. Is that what happens?
Well, it gets it's difficult because there are so many causes for eating disorders.
What do you observe more in your work?
Okay, I think it's a combination of three things. One is the individual person's temperament, their own sensitivity, their own makeup. There are some who are more sensitive, perhaps they're more perfectionistic, and that will make them more prone to an eating disorder, because the eating disorder then can give them some control. They can control the food when they don't think they can control other things in their life. But a second factor is the fact that I know in the United States we live in what we would call a culture or a religion of thinness.
Yes.
And it is, the women and the young girls are brainwashed. And now it's affecting, young men as well. But the third one, and this is really where the EMDR comes in, is that even if the eating disorder had not already begun, very often, if a woman is, first of all, think of it being impacted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by your entire culture. That's like a very trickle-down trauma all the time, okay? And you're living in that. And then if you have any other painful experiences, any other kind of trauma, and it's very important to realize that, and I think this is very important for people who are watching, that the trauma, I don't even use the word trauma anymore. I just use the word painful life experiences. So something can happen when you're 4 years old. You're very, very young, and you drop something and it breaks. And mom says, "You klutz, why did I ever have you?" Ooh. Now, 20 years later, you think about that and you kind of smile because, well, I was only a kid and that's over and it's done. the impact that it had on you is still stored up here. The brain holds on to everything.
And the effects are still running.
And what happens is that becomes like a seed. And then I start to feel not so good about me. And then I look at the world and all of my experiences, you see, through that lens. You see, now my lens is colored, and that builds over the years. And suddenly I realize that I never feel good about myself. And why do I always expect the worst of myself? That's the belief or the story about myself that began with that little seed, you see, and it builds over the years. And all it takes then is it doesn't even take very many at all. That's all that needs to happen.
Sometimes one bad and strong experience can impact that.
One, and sometimes a small one. So one of the things that we're very aware of right now is the power of the presence of the mother, especially, but both parents, when the child is just born, up until when the child is maybe 3 or 4, what we call the attachment phase. Exactly. Now, actually, I begin to explore attachment at the moment of conception, because after conception, you have 9 months with mom.
Yeah. So we will speak about that. We will give a little break now.
Sure.
Vamos fazer pequeno intervalo aqui no Pessoas de Valor.
O atual cenário de pandemia mudou completamente a rotina e o comportamento de todas as pessoas. Isso porque não sair de casa é a melhor opção para manter a saúde de todos. Realizamos o teste do Covid-19 na sua casa. A coleta é realizada por profissionais extremamente qualificados e com todos os EPIs recomendados pela Organização Mundial da Saúde. Óculos de proteção com protetor facial, avental, luvas descartáveis de procedimento, gorro impermeável, máscara PFF2. Proteção para calçados descartável. O Célula Mater entende que a saúde não pode parar e que alguns cuidados precisam ser tomados de imediato. Trabalhamos com o serviço de coleta domiciliar há muito tempo e com os últimos acontecimentos foi desenvolvida uma nova estratégia, implantando a frota desse serviço para atender ainda mais pessoas. Fique em casa, nós iremos até você. Realize seu agendamento através da nossa central de atendimento. WhatsApp 13 99647 9224. Central 13 32 25 2586.
Existe um bebê que é especial, está sempre na moda, bonito pra você. A mamãe e o papai, ele quer agradecer pelo banho de loja da estação do bebê. Roupinhas, acessórios, carrinhos, enxoval, toda a decoração da estação do bebê.
Rua Carvalho de Mendonça, 251, Vila Belmiro, Santos. Telefone 3302-1970.
O seu bebê feliz na estação do bebê.
Estamos de volta aqui no Pessoas de Valor com a entrevista importantíssima, muito interessante com o professor Andrew Silbert. You are talking to us about the moment of conception, and for this moment on, for the little child, many things can happen.
Yes, absolutely. And my sense is that many people think that whatever happens to us when we are that young, or even in the womb, that's not going to affect us because we don't remember. You see, that part of the brain wasn't working, but your body remembers. Yes. Your body always remembers, and your emotional system remembers. When you're in your mother's womb, you are taking on all of the mother's emotions. There's no screen between you and mom.
She's feeding us with nutrients, oxygen, and emotions.
And emotions, very exactly.
Experience of our life.
Exactly. So I've worked with clients who didn't understand why is it. They would say to me, I don't know, I just never wanted to be alive. I never wanted to, I don't know, I just never wanted to be alive. I don't know what that's about. And then as we worked together, and there are ways of using EMDR in this pre-verbal work, one particular client discovers that her mom was depressed during the entire period. Or another person is, a woman was carrying shame all the time. I feel so shameful about myself. I don't know why. I've had no sexual abuse. I don't understand. When we examined those 9 months, I discovered from her that her mother never wanted to have a child because it was a mistake. And so the mother carried shame during the entire pregnancy, and my client just took that on in the womb, in utero.
It's very interesting. And do you have the experience to achieve memories, non-verbal memories, before the pregnancy? So transgenerational traumas, to speak, in the family, that your patient...
Oh, the transgenerational?
Yes.
That's a very different, this is really where the genetics, I believe, comes in. I mean, genetically.
Epigenetically.
Yeah, right. And where it's not only the genetic things that happen around us, but that on the physical level, the biological level, genetically, we receive things over, several generations. I think a really good example of that is if there has been a history of suicide, my grandfather or my aunt committed suicide. Once it's in the family, it's like a door opens. And I work with clients who are much more prone to suicide because there was a history of it.
And then sometimes they don't even know about this.
Exactly.
And later they will discover that.
Exactly.
It's very interesting. So the experience, not only in the womb, but before that, in the family, has a lot of importance in your work also.
Exactly.
And can you say about more experience and connecting this to eating disorders?
Well, I would say that my own experience of eating disorders, the one thing I would want everybody watching, listening to know, is that they are dangerous.
Okay. Eating disorders are dangerous?
Eating disorders are very dangerous because without even appearing as if anything is the matter, if somebody is starving themselves, their body starts to feed on its own organs.
So you're talking about bulimia?
Well, now I'm talking, this is specifically anorexia. Okay. And then there is a combination of anorexia, which is starving oneself, bulimia, which is gorging on food and then vomiting it up. That combination is called bulimorexia.
Bulimorexia?
Yeah, that's a new one.
Did you create the term?
What's that? I didn't create it. No.
So it already exists?
It exists, yes. But the thing to keep in mind is that a person can look healthy, and on the inside, their body can really be suffering, which is why somebody with an eating disorder really needs to be tested by physicians who are able to test for the metabolic rate, how the body metabolizes food, as well as the body composition, the lean and fat balance in the body. to work with eating disorders because it is so complex, it's so physical, it's so physically dangerous. And the other thing to keep in mind is that very often eating disorders have a payoff. There's a reason, not only because of the culture and not only because of trauma, but very often there's a fear of feeling the emotions, all kinds of emotions.
That's the point, the origin of this eating disorder.
Well, that's one of them. See, sometimes it's because of they just don't have a sense of having any control in life. Well, I don't feel good enough about myself, so since the society says thin is good, I'll become very thin and then I'll feel better about myself.
But it's not true.
It's not true at all, exactly. And so the need for control, the fear of emotions, when somebody is abused, and they think of it, what will come up will be shame, will be anxiety, and these are the feelings that they do not want to feel. So if I don't eat, something changes inside of me. I get this kind of high feeling. Or if I overeat and stuff food down my throat, it pushes the feelings down. But so much of the work with eating disorders has to do with emotions and then having the courage to feel emotions, which was the name of the first book that I wrote. It was called The Courage to Feel. Because that is absolutely, I start working on that right away. If somebody who has anorexia, before when they even think about eating, their anxiety goes up. And if they have eaten anything, the shame goes up.
So they disconnect and work with this, with food. So how do you do to make these girls mostly in contact with their emotion and work with this in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
That is a very good question. It is very possible. But you have to have a great deal of patience, and the first thing that you have to have, let's say if you're the patient and I'm the therapist, our relationship has to become more important than the relationship between you and the eating disorder. Okay.
Trust and empathy.
And this is that connection, yes, exactly. And that is the very first thing, because you will not risk trying some of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do. Like, I'm going to ask you to go face to face with your anxiety. I'm going to ask you to face your shame.
Or maybe it's dangerous. How can I do this if I don't trust the therapist?
Exactly.
You're here to protect me, to help me.
Right.
Very special experience. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
It was an honor to have you here. Thank you. Pessoas de Valor vai ficando por aqui com essa fantástica entrevista internacional com o professor Dr. Andrew Silbert, trazendo a sua visão de muita experiência nos transtornos alimentares, usando EMDR, Gestalt e outras terapias. Foi um prazer tê-lo aqui e nós ficamos por aqui, e todos os programas Pessoas de Valor estão no site pessoasdevalor.com.br. Nós continuamos com a programação da Santa Cecília TV. Semana que vem voltamos com mais um Pessoas de Valor, sempre trazendo algo de muito valor realmente para o desenvolvimento humano de todos nós. Muito obrigado.